Hello everybody and welcome to this new episode of Books Up Close. I hope you're all doing well. Sorry it's taken me so long to get this review to you. I will tell you a little fact. It's taken 4 attempts to make this video, so I'm hoping this one finally does work. There were thunderstorms, there were noisy neighbours, there were unplugged microphones and other technical hitches. So I'm hoping this one works fine. So today we're going to talk about Percival Everett's new novel, Telephone, which came out this year. So if you don't know Percival Everett, firstly you should do. He is a very prolific writer. He's got over 35 books at this point. He's also the partner of Dan Senna, who's also an amazing novelist you should be reading. His books are quite difficult to categorize. Sometimes he writes in a very kind of lucid, clear, engaging way. Sometimes he writes very dense, theoretical novels. Sometimes he writes straight up genre fiction. Sometimes he writes poetry, short stories. He's a very innovative, kind of diverse writer. But in general, his books are defined by kind of big themes like America, violence, belief, identity, all the kind of really big themes. Telephone is no different in that regard, in that it marries both his kind of interest in the West and ideas of landscape and territory and belonging, along with formal complication and experimentation. This book was released in 3 versions, and each version pretty much looks the same on the outside except for tiny little differences in the design on the cover. Inside there are some shifts at various points in the novel. So at certain moments a character makes a decision or doesn't make a decision, or makes a decision and then what happens afterwards changes ever so slightly. And these changes are sometimes big, sometimes small. Ending of the 3 is also quite different. The version I read had a somewhat uplifting ending, whereas one of the other versions has a far less uplifting ending. And that really changes the whole way in which you experience the book. Now, this multiple version of the book is quite interesting, and it reminds me of Ali Smith's How to Be Both, which hopefully you've all read, in which you get the story told in 2 halves, one set in the contemporary period and one set during the Renaissance. And depending on which version you get, you'll read one part first and then the other part second, and each version is different. So what both novelists are doing in effect is changing the way in which we engage with the text, and suggesting that the text is not fixed, it is not unified, it is not one thing. So Telephone follows a African-American professor who lives in Los Angeles with his wife and daughter. He teaches geology and paleobiology. So the first part of the novel really revolves around the professor's home life and work life. So we have scenes with his wife and daughter at home, and then with colleagues and students at university. So 2 events in the first part really set the narrative in motion, which is one, he notices that his daughter's cognitive abilities as she's playing chess start to wane, and the other is he buys some clothes online, and in the pocket of one of the shirts he finds a note written in Spanish. So the first storyline takes us on a journey into his daughter's health condition, which gradually deteriorates. And the second storyline takes our professor into the New Mexico desert. I don't want to say too much about the plot beyond that point, other than it involves a poetry reading group, neo-Nazis, bus trip across borders, and so many other things. The book is at once a very philosophical reflection on chance, on family, on belonging, and it is also a very taut kind of genre piece. It's a contemporary Western set in both LA and the desert. The second half really pushes forward very quickly. You'll read it in kind of one go, I'm sure, as you kind of hurtle towards the ending and find out what's going to happen. So in essence, he's kind of marrying these 2 strands, one about family, one about immigration, belonging, and Americanness. So for me, Telephone joins Everett's other books in a way, kind of follows on from the tradition of Wounded, Half an Inch of Water, which are very Western-centred novels, thinking about landscape, thinking about violence, thinking about territory. But it also follows his more reflective books, such as Erasure, such as I'm Not Sidney Poitier, both of which are very comic novels, but also deal with very complex themes and interrogate deep philosophical questions about who we are and what it means to write and what it means to tell stories. In a very meagre number of pages, Everett does quite a lot in Telephone, and I'm going to give this 4 out of 5, only because I feel like the second half is maybe too quick. It hurtles too quickly towards its ending, and there are moments when I feel like side narratives could have been fleshed out. There could have been a little more substance in there. It's not a major critique by any means, but I think there's a moment where the joining of the two stories together could have been fused a little more tightly. However, if you read this book, you will not be disappointed, and it will make you want to read every other Percival Everett novel if you haven't done so already. If you do want to go on to another Everett book, my first suggestion is Wounded, which is a really beautiful, sparse, thin novel, again set in the West, in the mountains of Wyoming, and then go to Erasure, and then after that you'll want to read everything else he's written. So if you've read this book, let me know in the comments below. If you've read any other Everett novels, tell me about those too. As ever, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell so you get the notifications, and leave your comments. I'm really enjoying talking to you all and getting to know you and what you're reading and what you're liking. Until next time, keep safe and see you soon.